Hello everyone! Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about Cordyline Australis plants. Cordyline Australis, commonly known as the cabbage tree, or by its Maori name of tea or teaknuka, is a widely branched monocot tree endemic to New Zealand. It grows up to 20 meters 66 feet, tall with a stout trunk and sword-like leaves, which are clustered at the tips of the branches and can be up to 1 meter 3 feet 3 inches long. With its tall, straight trunk and dense, rounded heads, it is a characteristic feature of the New Zealand landscape. It is common over a wide latitudinal range from the far north of the North Island to the south of the South Island. It grows in a broad range of habitats. Known to Maori as teaknuka, the tree was used as a source of food, particularly in the South Island, where it was cultivated in areas where other crops would not grow. It provided durable fiber for textiles. Hardy and fast-growing, it is widely planted in New Zealand gardens, parks and streets, and numerous cultivars are available. The tree can also be found in large numbers in island restoration projects, where it was among the first seedling trees to be planted. It is also grown as an ornamental tree in higher latitude Northern Hemisphere countries with maritime climates, including parts of the upper west coast of the United States, Canada and the British Isles, where its common names include Cornish palm, cabbage palm, torbay palm, and torquay palm. Cordyline Australis grows up to 20 meters 66 feet, tall with a stout trunk, 1.5 to 2 meters 4 feet 11 inches 6 feet 7 in diameter. The largest known tree at Piakawau Golden Bay/Mohua was estimated to be 400 or 500 years old and stood 17 meters 56 feet tall with a circumference of 9 meters 30 feet at the base. Before it flowers, it has a slender unbranched stem. The first flowers typically appear at 6 to 10 years old in spring. The right conditions can reduce the first flowering age to 3 years. Havelock North, 2015 last year. After the first flowering, it divides to form a much branched crown with tufts of leaves at the each branch may fork after producing a flowering stem. The pale to dark gray bark is corky, persistent and fissured, and feels spongy to the touch. The long narrow leaves are sword-shaped, erect, dark to light green, 40 to 100 centimeters 16 to 39 in long and 3 to 7 centimeters 1 to 3 in wide at the base. With numerous parallel veins, the leaves grow in crowded clusters at the ends of the branches and may droop slightly at the tips and bend down from the bases when old. They are thick and have an indistinct midrib. The fine nerves are more or less equal and parallel. The upper and lower leaf surfaces are similar. In spring and early summer, sweetly perfumed flowers are produced in large, dense panicled flower spikes, 60 to 100 centimeters 24 to 39 in long, bearing well-spaced to somewhat crowded, almost sessile to sessile flowers and axes. Hello everyone! Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about Cordyline Australis plants. Cordyline Australis, commonly known as the cabbage tree, or by its Maori name of tea or teaknuka, is a widely branched monocot tree endemic to New Zealand. It grows up to 20 meters 66 feet, tall with a stout trunk and sword-like leaves, which are clustered at the tips of the branches and can be up to 1 meter 3 feet 3 inches long. With its tall, straight trunk and dense, rounded heads, it is a characteristic feature of the New Zealand landscape. It is common over a wide latitudinal range from the far north of the North Island to the south of the South Island. It grows in a broad range of habitats. Known to Maori as teaknuka, the tree was used as a source of food, particularly in the South Island, where it was cultivated in areas where other crops would not grow. It provided durable fiber for textiles. Hardy and fast-growing, it is widely planted in New Zealand gardens, parks and streets, and numerous cultivars are available. The tree can also be found in large numbers in island restoration projects, where it was among the first seedling trees to be planted. It is also grown as an ornamental tree in higher latitude, northern hemisphere countries with maritime climates, including parts of the upper west coast of the United States, Canada, and the British Isles, where its common names include Cornish palm, cabbage palm, torbay palm, and torquay palm. Cordyline australis grows up to 20 meters 66 feet tall with a stout trunk, 1.5 to 2 meters 4 feet 11 into 6 feet 7 in diameter. The largest known tree at Pyakawao, Golden Bay/Mohua, was estimated to be 400 or 500 years old and stood 17 meters 56 feet tall with a circumference of 9 meters 30 feet at the base. Before it flowers, it has a slender unbranched stem. The first flowers typically appear at 6 to 10 years old in spring. The right conditions can reduce the first flowering age to 3 years. Havelock North, 2015 last year. After the first flowering, it divides to form a much-branched crown with tufts of leaves at the. Each branch may fork after producing a flowering stem. The pale to dark gray bark is corky, persistent and fissured, and feels spongy to the touch. The long, narrow leaves are sword-shaped, erect, dark to light green, 40 to 100 centimeters 16 to 39 in long, and 3 to 7 centimeters 1 to 3 in wide at the base. With numerous parallel veins, the leaves grow in crowded clusters at the ends of the branches and may droop slightly at the tips and bend down from the bases when old. They are thick and have an indistinct midrib. The fine nerves are more or less equal and parallel. The upper and lower leaf surfaces are similar. In spring and early summer, sweetly perfumed flowers are produced in large, dense panicled flower spikes, 60 to 100 centimeters 24 to 39 in long, bearing well-spaced to somewhat crowded, almost sessile to sessile flowers and axes. The flowers are crowded along the ultimate branches of the panicles. The bracts, which protect the developing flowers, often have a distinct pink tinge before the flowers open. In South Canterbury and North Otago, the bracts are green. The individual flowers are 5 to 6 millimeters 16 to 14 in diameter. The tepals are free almost to the base and reflexed. The stamens are about the same length as the tepals. The stigmas are short and trifid. The fruit is a white berry 5 to 7 millimeters 16 to 932 in diameter, which is greedily eaten by birds. The flowers have a strong and sweet scent, and the nectar attracts great numbers of insects to the flowers. Large, peg-like rhizomes, covered with soft, purplish bark, up to 3 meters 10 feet long in old plants, grow vertically down beneath the ground. They serve to anchor the plant and to store fructose in the form of fructin. When young, the rhizomes are mostly fleshy and are made up of thin-walled storage cells. They grow from a layer called the secondary thickening meristm. New Zealand's native tropical plants that arrived from the north 15 million years ago in the warm Miocene era. Because it has evolved in response to the local climate, geology, and other factors. See, Australis varies in appearance from place to place. This variation can alter the overall appearance of the tree, canopy shape and branch size, the relative shape and size of the leaves, and their color and stiffness. There may also be invisible adaptations for resistance to disease or insect attack. Some of these regional provenances are different enough to have been named by North Island, Bori, Titter in the north, Timanu in the central uplands, Tarariki in the east, and Waranui in the west. In Northland, see Australis shows a great deal of genetic diversity, suggesting it is where old genetic lines have endured. Some trees in the far north have floppy, narrow leaves, which botanist Philip Simpson attributes to hybridization with C. familio, the dwarf cabbage tree. In eastern Northland, C. australis generally has narrow, but some trees have much broader leaves than normal and may have hybridized with the Three Kings cabbage tree. C. Eptecta, which grows at North Cape and on nearby islands. These Eptecta-like characteristics appear in populations of C. australis along parts of the eastern coastline, from the Karakari Peninsula to the Coromandel Peninsula. In western Northland and Auckland, a form often called titter grows. When young titter are generally very spindly and are common in young kauri forests. When growing in the open, titter can become massive trees with numerous long thin branches and relatively short, broad leaves. In the central volcanic plateau, cabbage trees are tall with stout, relatively unbranched stems and large stiff straight leaves. Fine specimens are found along the upper Wanganui River on old trees. The leaves tend to be relatively broad. The leaves radiate strongly, suggesting that Timanu is adapted to the cold winters of the upland central plateau. It may have originated in the open country created by lava, volcanic ash, and pumice. Trees of the Timanu type are also found in northern Taranaki, the King Country, and the Bay of Plenty lowlands. Tarariki are found in the east of the North Island from East Cape to the Wairarapa. Bori valued the narrow spiky leaves as a source of particularly tough, durable fiber. Tarariki's strong leaf fibers may be an adaptation to the region's hot, dry summers. In parts of the Wairarapa, the trees are particularly spiky, with stiff leaves and partially rolled leaf blades. The trees near East Cape, by contrast, have leaves that hang laxly on the tree. In Hawke's Bay, some trees have greener, broader leaves, and this may be because of Waranui characteristics. Through the Manawat Gorge, Warani grow to the west of the North Island's main divide. They have long, broad flaccid leaves, which may be an adaptation to persistent westerly winds. The Waranui type occurs in Wellington, Horuhenu, and Wanganui, and extends with some modifications to the southern Taranaki coast. In Taranaki, cabbage trees generally have a compact canopy with broad straight leaves. In the South Island, Warani is the most common form, but it is variable. The typical form grows with little variation from Cape Campbell to the northern Catlins, and from the eastern coast to the foothills of the southern Alps. K. tiritiri ote mona. In Marlborough's Wirral Valley, cabbage trees tend to retain their old, dead leaves, lending them an untidy appearance. The climate there is an extreme one, with hot, dry summers and cold winters. In northwest Nelson, there are 3 ecotypes defined by soil and exposure. Trees growing on limestone bluffs have stiff, blue-green leaves. On the river flats, the trees are tall with narrow, lax, dark green leaves and an uneven canopy. Cape, along the coast to the far west, the trees are robust with broad, bluish leaves. The latter two forms extend down the west coast, with the lax-leaved forms growing in moist, fertile, sheltered river valleys, while the bluish-leaved forms prefer rocky slopes exposed to the full force of the salt-laden coastal winds. In Otago, cabbage trees gradually become less common towards the south until they come to end, and in the northern Catlins, they reappear on the south coast at Waikawa, Southland, but they are not the Waranui type. Rather, they are vigorous trees with broad, green leaves and broad canopies, absent from much of Fiordland. It was probably introduced by Bori to the Chatham Islands at 44 OS and to Stewart Island, Rakura at 4650 S. They extend along the coast towards Fiordland and inland to the margins of some of the glacier-fed lakes. Very vigorous when they are young, these trees seem well adapted to the very cold winters of the south. A study of seedlings grown from seed collected in 28 areas showed a north-south change in leaf shape and dimensions. Seedling leaves get longer and narrower southwards. Seedlings often have leaves with red-brown pigmentation, which disappears in older plants, and this coloration becomes increasingly common towards the south. The changes in shaped leaves getting narrower and more robust from north to south, and from lowland to montane suggest adaptations to colder weather. Cordyline australis was collected in 1769 by Sir Joseph Banks and Dr. Daniel Solander, naturalists on the Endeavour, during Lieutenant James Cook's first voyage to the Pacific. The type locality. It was named Dracaena australis by Georg Foster, who published it as entry 151 in his Florulae Insularum Australium Protramissive, 1786. It is sometimes still sold as a Dracaena, particularly for the houseplant market in Northern Hemisphere countries. In 1833, Stefan Endlicher reassigned the species to the genus Cordyline. The genus name Cordyline derives from an ancient Greek word for a club cordyle, a reference to the enlarged underground stems or rhizomes, while the species name Australis is Latin for southern. The common name cabbage tree is attributed by some sources to early settlers having used the young leaves as a substitute for cabbage. However, the name probably predates the settlement of New Zealand. Georg Foster, writing in his Voyage Around the World of 1777 about the events of Friday, April 23, 1773, refers on page 114 to the discovery of a related species in Fiordland as not the true cabbage palm, and says that with a little of the flavor of cabbage, Foster may have been referring to the cabbage palmetto, Sabal palmetto of Florida, which resembles the Cordyline somewhat, and was named for the cabbage-like appearance of its terminal bud. Cordyline australis is the tallest of New Zealand's 5 native Cordyline species. Of these, the commonest are C. banksii, which has a slender, sweeping trunk, and C. indivisa, a handsome plant with a trunk up to 8 meters 26 feet tall, bearing a massive head of broad leaves, up to 2 meters 6 feet 7 in long. In the far north of New Zealand, C. australis can be distinguished by its larger, heavily branched tree form, narrower leaves, and smaller seeds from C. obtecta. The Three Kings cabbage tree, its closest relative, C. australis, is rather variable and forms from the northern offshore islands. May be hybrids with C. obtcta. Hybrids with C. pumilio and C. banksii also occur often where the plants are in close vicinity, because they flower at about the same time and share the chromosome number 2n equals 38. With C. australis, the tree was well known to Maori before its scientific discovery. The generic Maori language term for plants in the genus Cordyline is T. cognate with Tongan sp and Hawaiian K from Proto-Austronesian *sire, C. fruticosa or C. terminalis. Names recorded as specific to C. australis include T. knuka, T. kabuka, T. rakau, T. tipua, and T. wenik. Each tribe had names for the tree depending on its local uses and characteristics. Simpson reports that the names highlight the characteristics of the tree that were important to Maori. These include what the plant looked like, whether it was a large tree T. rakau, T. pua, the whiteness of its flowers T. puatia, whether its leaves were broad T. waranui, twisted along the edges T. tahanui, other names refer to its uses, whether its fruit attracted birds T. manu, or the leaves were particularly suitable for making ropes T. wenik, and nuts T. kopenga. The most widely used name, T. knuka, refers to the use of the leaf hearts as food. Cordyline australis occurs from North Cape to the very south of the South Island, where it becomes less and less common until it reaches its southernmost natural limits at Sandy Point 4630s, west of Invercargill near Already Beach. It is absent from much of Fiordland, probably because there is no suitable habitat, and is unknown on the subantarctic islands to the south of New Zealand, probably because it is too cold. It occurs on some offshore islands. Poor Knights, Stewart, and the Chatham spot was probably introduced by Maori. In the Stewart Island region, it is rare, growing only on certain islands, headlands, and former settlement sites where it may have been introduced by muttonbird collectors. While on the Chatham Islands, it is also largely a notable absentee, generally a lowland species. It grows from sea level to about 3,300 feet, reaching its upper limits on the volcanoes of the central North Island, where eruptions have created open spaces for it to exploit, and in the foothills of the Southern Alps in the South Island, where deforestation may have played a part in giving it room to grow. In the central North Island, it has evolved a much sturdier form with the Maori name Timenu, meaning with branches bearing broad, straight upright leaves. This form resembles that found in the far south of the South Island, suggesting that they are both adapted to cold conditions. Cordyline australis is a light-demanding pioneer species, and seedlings die when overtopped by other trees. To grow well, young plants require open space so they are not shaded out by other vegetation. Another requirement is water during the seedling stage. Although adult trees can store water and are drought-resistant, seedlings need a good supply of water to survive. This stops the species from growing in sand dunes, unless there are wet depressions present, and from hillsides unless there is a seepage area. The fertility of the soil is another factor. Settlers in Canterbury use the presence of the species to situate their homesteads and gardens. The fallen leaves of the tree also help to raise the fertility of the soil when they break down. Another factor is temperature, especially the degree of frost. Young trees are killed by frost, and even old trees can be cut back. This is why C. australis is absent from upland areas and from very frosty inland areas. Early European explorers of New Zealand described jungles of cabbage trees along the banks of streams and rivers, in huge swamps and lowland valleys. Few examples of this former abundance survive today. Such areas were the first to be cleared by farmers looking for flat land and fertile soil. In modern New Zealand, isolated individuals rather than as parts of a healthy ecosystem. The cabbage tree's year begins in autumn among the tight spike of unopened leaves, projecting from the center of each tuft of leaves. Some of the growing tips have changed from making leaves to producing inflorescences for the coming spring, and around these, 2 or 3 buds begin to produce leaves. The inflorescence and the leaf buds pass the winter, protected by the enveloping spike of unopened leaves. Months later in spring or early summer, it bears its flowers on the outside of the tree, exposed to insects and birds. Flowering takes place over a period of 4 to 6 weeks, giving maximum exposure to pollinating insects. The flowers produce a sweet perfume which attracts large numbers of insects. The nectar produced by the flowers contains aromatic compounds, mainly esters and terpenes, which are particularly attractive to moths. Bees use the nectar to produce a light honey to feed their young and increase the size of the hive. In the early summer, it takes about 2 months for the fruit to ripen. Thousands of small fruits available for birds to eat and disperse. The strong framework of the inflorescence can easily bear the weight of heavy birds like the New Zealand pigeon, which was formerly the major disperser of the seeds. Each fruit contains 3 to 6 shiny black seeds which are coated in a charcoal-like substance called phytomelon. The latter may serve to protect the seeds from the digestive process in the gut of a bird. The seeds are also rich in linoleic acid as a food source for the developing embryo plant, a compound which is also important in the egg-laying cycle of birds, because it takes about 2 years for a particular stem to produce an inflorescence. Cabbage trees tend to flower heavily in alternative years, with a bumper flowering every 3 to 5 years. Each inflorescence bears 5,000 to 10,000 flowers, so a large inflorescence may carry about 40,000 seeds, or 1 million seeds for the whole tree. In a good flowering year, hundreds of millions. For a healthy grove of trees, Cordyline australis is one of the few New Zealand forest trees that can recover from fire. It can renew its trunk from buds on the protected rhizomes under the ground. This gives the tree an advantage because it can regenerate itself quickly, and the fire has eliminated competing plants. Cabbage tree leaves contain oils which make them burn readily. The same oils may also slow down the decay of fallen leaves, so that they build up a dense mat that prevents the seeds of other plants from germinating. When the leaves do break down, they form a fertile soil around the tree. Cabbage tree seed also has a store of all, which means it remains viable for several years. When a bushfire has cleared the land of vegetation, cabbage tree seeds germinate in great numbers. Space opened up by the flames, older trees sometimes grow epicormic shoots directly from their trunks after storm or fire damage. Aerial rhizomes can also be produced from the trunk if it sustains damage or has become hollow and grow down into the soil to regenerate the plant. Such regeneration can lead to trees of great age with multiple trunks. Many plants and animals are associated with C. australis in healthy ecosystems. The most common epiphytes are ferns, astillas, and orchids. Old trees often carry large clumps of the climbing fern Asplenium, and in moist places, filmy ferns and kidney ferns cling to the branches. Astelia species and Calispermum often establish in the main fork of the tree, and one tree can host several species of native orchid. Other common epiphytes include Griselinia lucida, as well as a range of mosses, liverworts, lichens, and fungi. 2 fungus species, which infect living tissue Phanerachida, Cordylines, and Sphaeropsis. Cordylines occur almost exclusively on Australis. The lichen primarily found on the west coast of New Zealand, grows exclusively on the bark of C. australis animals, and birds associated with C. australis include lizards which forage among the flowers, including the gold-striped gecko, which is well camouflaged for life among the leaves of the tree. New Zealand bellbirds like to nest under the dead leaves or among the flower stalks, and paradise shelducks commonly build their nests in the base of an old cabbage tree, standing in the middle of a field. Red-crowned parakeets are often seen foraging in cabbage trees. In South Canterbury, long-tailed bats shelter during the day in the hollow branches, which would once have provided nesting holes for many birds. The berries of C. australis are enjoyed by bellbirds, tynk, and carer. 64. Bories sometimes planted groves of cabbage trees pt. to attract carer, which could be snared when they came to eat the berries. Reminiscing in 1903 about life in New Zealand, 60 or more years earlier, George Clark describes how such a tapu grove of cabbage trees would attract huge numbers of pigeons. About 4 miles from our house, there was a great preserve of wood pigeons that was made as tapu as the native chiefs could devise. At a certain season, the pigeons came in vast flocks to feed on the white berries of the tea tree Bracuna. Sick and got so heavy with fat that they could hardly fly from one tree to another. No gun was allowed in the place. The Boris, with a long slender rod and a slip noose at the end, squatted under the leaves and noiselessly slipped the noose over the necks of the stupid pigeons as they were feeding. As the native birds have vanished from much of New Zealand with the clearing of forests, it is now flocks of starlings which descend upon the fruit. The nectar of the flowers is sought. Bellbirds, tynk, and stitchbirds, the leaves and the rough bark provide excellent homes for insects such as caterpillars and moths, small beetles, fly larvae, wetten, snails, and slugs. Many of these are then eaten by birds such as saddlebacks and robins. The rough bark also provides opportunities for epiphytes to cling and grow, and lizards hide amongst the dead leaves, coming out to drink the nectar and to eat the insects. Good flowering seasons occur every few years only. While it is said that they foretell dry summers, it has been observed that they tend to follow dry seasons. Insects, including beetles, moths, wasps, and flies, use the bark, leaves, and flowers of the tree in various ways. Some feed or hide camouflaged in the skirt of dead leaves, a favorite dry place for wetland to hide in winter. Many of the insect companions of the tree have followed it into the domesticated surroundings of parks and home gardens. If the leaves are left to decay, the soil underneath cabbage trees becomes a black humus that supports a rich array of amphipods, earthworms, and millipedes, of which the best known is Epiphrin vermiculata, the cabbage tree moth, which is perfectly adapted to hide on a dead leaf. Its caterpillars eat large holes and wedges in the leaves. The caterpillars eat holes in the surface of the leaves and leave characteristic notches in the leaf margins. They can infest young trees but seldom damage older trees, which lack the skirt of dead leaves where the parent moths like to hide. Cordyline australis was the first native plant in New Zealand used by early European settlers to produce liquor. In the 1850s, distiller Owen McShane created a liquor made from Cordyline australis rhizomes, known variously as Cooper's Schnapps or McShane's Chained Lightning. McShane sold this to settlers and Bori. In the lower South Island, other early uses included woven hats worn by early settlers and toboggans made for children. Cordyline australis is one of the most widely cultivated New Zealand native trees. In Northwest Europe and other cool oceanic climates, it is very popular as an ornamental tree because it looks like a palm tree. Hardy forms from the coldest areas of the southern or inland South Island tolerate northern hemisphere conditions best, while North Island forms are much more tender. It can also be grown successfully in Mediterranean climates. It is easily grown from fresh seedlings often spontaneously appear in gardens from bird dispersed seed. It can also be propagated easily from shoot, stem, and even trunk cuttings. It grows well as far north as the eastern coast of Scotland, including the village of Portdower. It is more common in southern England and in Ireland, where it is grown all over the island. Although not a palm, it is locally named Cornish palm, Manx palm, or Torbay palm. The last name is due to its extensive use in Torbay, it being the official symbol of that area, used in tourist posters promoting South Devon as the English. Distribution ranges from 30 for S to 46S, and despite its ultimately subtropical origins, it also grows at about 5 degrees from the Arctic Circle in Masfjorden, Norway, latitude 61N, in a microclimate protected from Arctic winds and moderated by the Gulf Stream. Thank you for watching.